You never existed, Jimmy. Jimmy, you didn't exist. Jimmy? Jimmy? You didn't exist, never. 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 Hear me? Hear me, Jimmy? I'm looking right at you, Jimmy. This is between you and me, Jimmy. You didn't exist. You didn't. Hey guys. Alright, today we are back with an alternate history hub video. This time not so much, well, it is alternate history because it's the dystopian world of 1984, but it's not him, making up his own logical conclusions or whatever with history, or exploring what-if questions. This is him just explaining the world of 1984, which, by the way, I have very strong feelings about this book. It fucking sucks. George Orwell fucking sucks. He's an awful writer. This book is absolute garbage. 1, the main character is a piece of shit. 2, the main character, I'm fairly certain, is a rapist. He's a creeper. That is at least a guarantee. Quite possibly a rapist. He has thought about raping his co-workers. It is stated in the book when you are in his brain. 3, pretty much I just fucking hate that main character. The ending is absolute garbage. It's not a satisfying book. It's just a garbage-ass book that I had to read for high school several years ago. And I'm still mad about it because it fucking sucked. And George Orwell... I don't like him. That's about all I gotta say about that. Anyways, let's go ahead and learn about the world of 1984 and also how awful George Orwell's world building is and how none of it makes sense.
In the 1940s, George Orwell published a novel that illustrated a dystopian future. Well, future at the time. In the year 1984, the world has taken an unrecognizable shape. All remnants of what used to be, now destroyed, as the 20th century took a horrendous turn. Orwell imagined a world where totalitarianism reigned, individualism was dead, and reality and history was simply a matter of opinion. Of course, this never happened, as it was just fiction. But the novel 1984 has resurged in popular culture because many have made connections between this dark society and our own. Orwell never saw the rise of the internet.
I will agree to the correlations there between the NSA and whatnot.
Or the policies of the 21st century, but his novel has been treated by some as almost a foreshadowing. Constant surveillance of every citizen by INSAC, constant surveillance by every government against its own citizens, those sort of connections. And this is...
I mean, that's just a logical conclusion to get to. Anyone with like half a brain, I'd say, could probably figure that out. That if technology reached a certain point, that governments would indeed spy on their own citizens. It's government. If the governments don't really need to fear the people, and the government does what is in their best interest, they don't do what is in the best interest of the people. Which is why maybe politicians should fear for themselves.
It's only gotten more popular as...
Just a joke. Don't arrest me.
As more compare
FBI.
This dystopian society and our own. This video isn't meant to compare our society and Orwell's. This video is simply a summary of the politics, history, and world in the scenario Orwell crafted. Unsurprisingly, this is going to have some spoilers as this video fully fleshes out the world and society of 1984. Let's start...
Spoilers. The book fucking sucks.
Start off with some history. How does the world become this? In Orwell's novel, the 20th century is one long tragedy. The potential of humanity and this great path of civilization is entirely squandered in just a few decades. Since the novel was published in 1949, it's not surprising this is where the future begins to go downhill. It all started after World War II and the dawn of the Cold War. The precursor division of the world already has begun to be seen. For us, in the 21st century, we know how it ends. Soviet Union falls, nuclear war never happens,
Yay.
etc., etc. But in Orwell's timeline, there is no decades-long tension of the Cold War between America and Russia. Instead, sometime in the early 1950s, World War III breaks out. Nuclear bombs were used on major cities around the world, including Colchester, but not London. All we know is Britain
Why would London avoid a nuke? It wouldn't.
was nuked multiple times. This was probably around 1954. During the bombings, the Soviet Union invaded all of mainland Europe, as its army swept even into the Iberian Peninsula. The British Isles became the last bastion on the continent. In the aftermath of the war, the West unified, as the United States and the British Commonwealth united into a single country. The United States, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain formed to create Oceania. Oceania then went
It's a dumb name.
on to annex Latin America. After this, history gets a little bit fuzzy. What we do know is that because of the traumatic events of the war, unrest occurred in Oceania and the Soviet Union. Sometime after 1954, Oceania fell into civil war between capitalism and a new homegrown ideology. This war, by 1984, is referred to as the Revolution. This new ideology won,
Creative.
and under this victory formed itself into a single party, INSAC. We'll talk about this in a sec, but first, let's discuss the rest of the world. Sometime in the 1950s and 60s, simultaneous revolutions occurred in the USSR and China. Neo-Bolshevikism united Europe and Russia into Eurasia, while China, after fighting amongst itself for a decade, finally
Just casual Chinese. That's what China does every century or so, you know?
formed into Eastasia under the nicely named ideology called obliteration of the self. This
yes,
history
of course.
that you just learned is something that no citizen in Oceania would know about, which is a good way to introduce you to this dystopian world. By 1984, the world is divided between these three nations: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia, all in a state of perpetual war over an area called the Equatorial Front. North Africa, through the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia, is constantly fought and interchanged between the three superpowers. We'll get back to that later. Even though the history of the early 20th century by 1984 would only be decades ago, they might as well have been thousands. The nations, history, people before INSAC are simply myths. And what exists is a society that is totalitarianism to its extreme. First, welcome to Britain. Except if you're a citizen, you've never known it as Britain. You know it as Airstrip 1. For many, Britain
God, I
is a
remember that
distant
name.
memory. The party's grip on the mind is so powerful, what once was an unquestionable fact, like a name, is similar to a faint dream. You question if it even happened, if it was ever real at all. Then you forget about it. This is the most prominent attribute of Oceania, the control of information to such an extent that facts are not reality, and reality can be changed simply on the whim of Big Brother and the party, INSAC. INSAC controls all. INSAC sees all. To say it changed society is an understatement. INSAC destroyed society and remade it into something where only it can thrive. Western civilization is basically dead. Now is only a civilization that exists purely for the party to rule without question. How exactly it did this, we don't know. Now when I say party, INSAC isn't a party like the Democrats, Republicans, or even Nazis. It's more like a society within a society. It has its own separate culture and rules from the majority of the population. Oceania is split between three main classes. The inner party, basically the secretive heads of the state, is only 2% of the population, followed by the outer.
Hey man, with how much land they control, 2%? That's a good amount of people. And then 13% are in the outer party? Not bad.
Party, the bureaucratic but still devoted, educated people, which is 13%. And then everyone else, the proles, the uneducated, easy to manipulate simpletons who live in poverty, never knowing any better. Think of it like the ruling classes of Westeros. They have their own issues and culture, while the masses are simply the mundane peasants nobody really cares about. The inner and outer party is divided between four main sections: the Ministry of Peace, who wages war against Eurasia or Eastasia, depending
So the Secretary of Defense for the United States.
on who it is at the time, the Ministry of Love, which
Defense.
shuts down opposition and quells dissent, the Ministry of
yes,
Truth,
love.
the propaganda arm of the party.
Oh, of
Propaganda is, to put it lightly. This purpose of the party is to rewrite, invent, or destroy any conflicting bit of news and history that goes against the party. News stories tell of war heroes who in actuality don't exist, that sort of thing. The Ministry of Plenty deals with economics and rations. It decides who gets what and what resources must be cut back. Every ministry
sounds
is
like they're
housed
very
in
plentiful.
pyramids that tower over the London skyline, 300 meters in the air, or roughly 1,000 feet tall. In Oceania, the only one thing that matters is Ainsak. Since the proles are too uneducated to matter and are easy to manipulate by either nationalistic pandering or to create a fake crisis,
No,
the
they look
party
like dorks.
only really has to worry about its own stability to survive. So it doesn't really monitor or care about the majority of the population. The party only has to worry about its own stability to survive. Like a human body, it remains healthy by purging out the harmful educated elements and those not entirely loyal to the ideology. Decades ago, there were mass purges in the 50s and 60s inside the party. Ainsak removed every threat of the old world to solidify itself among fanatic new supporters. By cutting off the population of both the party and masses from history, Ainsak is able to have a monopoly on facts. For example, the party says it invented the airplane. This is simply fact now, and everyone believes it. The Ministry of Truth rewrites or destroys any evidence of this not being the case. Those in the party who openly question this simply disappear or are sent to the Ministry of Love for re-education. Continue in mass until, for the most part, it's a fact amongst the population that the party did invent the airplane. This is a process. How Orwell describes this is that simply through the progression of decades, Ainsak was able to normalize attributes that haven't existed in the West for centuries. Class divide, uneducation, mass atrocities, censorship. These are allowed to be commonplace because anyone who didn't agree with it is either too unimportant or dead to care. Then solidify this base with youthful and nationalistic young adults, and you've got a healthy future for your ideology. Ainsak's ideology runs so deep, children are more likely to openly report their own parents for thought crimes. Ainsak recreated culture, crafted new terms to allow only it to exist. A thought crime is anything that goes against the policy of the party. If you commit a thought crime, you can be vaporized by the thought police. Simply disappear. And when I mean disappear, I mean it is now a fact that you are never a person, an unperson. This isn't like kids giving Jimmy the silent treatment. This is everyone simply forgetting there ever was a Jimmy, and forgetting that they forgot. The mention of your existence somehow by your family, co-workers, is now a thought crime in itself. Documents are changed or destroyed so that there is no evidence you ever did exist. Not that you did, Jimmy. This is how Ainsak is able to quell dissent. This term...
Jimmy, you didn't exist? Jimmy? Jimmy? You didn't exist? Never. 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 Hear me? Hear me, Jimmy? I'm looking right at you, Jimmy. This is between you and me, Jimmy. You didn't exist. You didn't.
Comes from the official language of the party, newspeak. It's technically just short in English, but it's entirely designed to control the use of words that may be threatening to the party. Simplistic terms like duckspeak, crime-think, black-white. By limiting language to small bits, it makes debate controllable or refutable. Ainsak simply has a monopoly on political discourse because it made the words up. In 1984, this goes deeper than a weird language. Brainwashing is a cultural manifestation that goes down to the personal level. Reality and history itself can be changed with the bureaucratic stroke of a pen, and nobody thinks that that stroke ever happened. This is doublethink, a newspeak term to hold two conflicting beliefs and hold both as equal. Neither are cancelled out, both are believed. This is best emulated by the ongoing war in the book. The party tells the public that Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia, even if just a few years ago the enemy was Eastasia. East Asian bombs rained on the city, but Everyone believes it was Eurasia because Big Brother and the party said so. Eurasia was always the enemy. East Asia was always the ally. This can change on a whim. History and information would be rewritten by the party to reflect any new change. It's not a debate to the people. It was just always this way. It would be like changing colors. The sky is blue, but the party says the sky is now red. So you believe it's red. Not say or pretend. You with all your heart know for certain that the sky has always been red.
Yeah, I thought everyone knew that. The sky is red. Come on, guys. There's some of you that think the sky is a different color. What's wrong with you? God, loser. The sky is red, man. The party said so.
Never even considered the change happened. This is another newspeak term called black-white. There are a lot of terms. Why does this happen? Is everyone stupid? Well, if you go by demographics, yeah. It's not this simple, though. This world is all these people have ever known. Think of North Korea. Actually, just apply all of this to North Korea. Kim Jong-il must have gotten inspired somehow. You can say whatever you want when you raise generations to worship you. So, what is Insak even? Is it fascist? Socialist? Totalitarian? Green Party? Does it have specific policies? What's its views on states' rights? Insak in itself is a conundrum, a product of doublethink. Officially, Insak is socialist. It teaches that the days before the revolution were horrendous, as the average citizen literally bowed to the capitalists, even going so far to say capitalists could choose any woman to sleep with and nobody could do anything. Then Insak came and forever made the world better. But at the same time, Insak hates socialists, despises socialist policies, and this is openly admitted by everyone. Yet nobody sees anything wrong with it, because that's the power of doublethink. Insak ideology, if you can call it that, isn't different at all than Eurasian Bolshevikism or East Asian obliteration of the self. They're basically the same society. Technological and social differences aren't that far apart between the three. This is something that may be recognized by all of them, or simply ignored. We don't know. The relationship that continues between all of them is perpetual war. War is what runs this world. It's what allows all three nations to survive. It's a distraction. It can rile up the uneducated masses. It's a constant overshadowing force that Big Brother uses. Insak is the protector against the Eurasian hordes, or East Asian, whichever. What are they fighting over? Resources? Well, they have all the resources they need, since they control so much territory. Power? No one can really overtake the other. This is already established. Well, then what? Nothing. They're fighting over nothing. The equatorial front and polar front, as mentioned earlier, was never anybody's territory. It's simply a giant fighting arena, where the economic waste from overloaded military buildup from all of the countries is shipped to, almost like venting out steam. Borders constantly shift, countless soldiers die from territory which nobody wants, and the native people are enslaved and transferred between the three countries to work for the war machine, which continues the cycle again. All the nations have nukes. They could easily destroy each other, invade Britain or Europe, start wars in Russia and China, actually attacking the homelands. But that disrupts everything. It destroys the balance of power, and these heads of state like their power. So they constantly fight over the jungle and desert to keep what they have, to keep nationalistic fervor up. 1984 is a twisted world. Whether it's realistic or not, doesn't really matter. The consistent theme is information is important, and the control of that information is most important. That's the biggest thing to take away from Orwell's world. Everything Insak did was to make sure the population was loyal and too stupid to realize its manipulation, going so far to make those who did manipulate believe they weren't even manipulating in the first place. Does this tie into our world? I'm not even touching that subject. Like and subscribe if you have not done so.
I still stand by my statement at the beginning of the video that 1984 is an awful fucking book. The characters are absolute garbage. The world building is pretty bland and meh. It's been so long since I've read it, I can't explain on finer details, but I just remember fucking hating it. I just remember those details about the main character and the ending. It was fucking awful. And yeah, that was the dystopian world of 1984 explained. I hope you guys enjoyed. Uh, I enjoyed this video because it's Alternate History Hub. He always does great job on his videos, so yeah, of course I'm gonna enjoy it. But yeah, remember to leave a suggestion down below for what you want to see me react to next, and I'll see you guys in the next video.